I feel like I had an extremely pivotal moment. Something changed where I was just like, this isn't how I want to live. I'm not happy. I don't like the way my family is being led. And what's wrong with, like, what is going on here that I need to fix? Like, oh, this has to start with me because I'm the leader of the house. And then that's when I realized there was a lot of damage done that I just suppressed for a long time because I just didn't have resources.
Welcome to the Becoming Sound podcast, where we dive into the tough stuff and try to find the humor in the hot mess of being an adult child. Join me as we peel back the layers on growing up in dysfunction, navigating substance abuse, mental health challenges, and everything in between. Hi, and welcome back to the Becoming Sound podcast. I'm your host, Krista Zaft, and if you're new here, thanks for joining me today. I have Samantha Mazola on the show today, who has been through a beautiful transformation in her own life. She is the owner of Samantha's World, her online presence, an author of her cookbook called Transformation Recipes, Cooking with Love. As well, she is a speaker, a personal trainer, a nutrition and life coach, and the host of her own podcast on Spotify called Talk About It with Sam. And I'm excited to talk with her today. So let's get started. Hi, Samantha. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, of course. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what it is you do?
Yeah, of course. So I am a certified life, fitness, and nutrition coach. I work full-time at an all-women's fitness facility. And then I do my small business on the side as well. And then also managing my small business, I've written a cookbook, and I'm actually continuing another book right now that will be published late spring.
Nice. Fun. Can you share a little bit about your journey of healing and recovery, particularly around childhood trauma? Can you tell us a bit about that?
So, growing up, it was super rough. I dealt with a lot of childhood trauma. One of my parents was an addict. My father was a really bad drug addict. And that was really difficult growing up. I remember like finding out that I didn't come from a home like everybody else kind of later in life, a little bit later than I think I would like to. And when I realized, when it hit me, I was a little bit sad about it. But I also remember growing up super grateful and I had a really good grandfather who taught me a lot about like appreciation and kind of just like appreciating the things that I do have. Growing up, having a drug addict parent, you see a lot of stuff. You see a lot of things that a lot of kids shouldn't see, a lot of verbal abuse, a lot of physical abuse, definitely emotional abuse. But as I continued to get older, I was very fortunate. I had a lot of people in my life that I was blessed to have encountered, and they kind of helped me and got me through definitely my childhood and then into kind of my teenage years. And then I kind of took it on from there. I'm actually really proud to say, I want to say about 16, 17, I decided that I was going to have a really good life and that I was going to be the one that was going to do it. And I kind of took the wheel and took off from there.
That's awesome. What age were you when you kind of realized that things weren't so normal in your house?
Yeah, so I was in the second grade when I had a really close friend of mine explain to me that my father was definitely a drug addict. At first, I didn't really know what that meant because we didn't talk about it in the house. Our lifestyle was our lifestyle, and I seen what I seen. We were very much kind of, which is totally against anything that I would teach now, but what happens in the house stays in the house. And then I had a really close friend of mine who sat me down and was like, no, like, dude, you're not supposed to live like that. Like, when you come from love, it's different. And really explained to me kind of like the different behaviors in different households.
Like grade 2? That's crazy.
Yeah.
Like,
actually, he's still a friend of mine now. And
really?
he's extremely emotionally intelligent. Yeah.
Wow.
It's funny because we talk about it now. And he had a lot of older brothers. So and he had a ton of siblings. So I think it was talked about a lot in their house. And he experienced a lot of things that were similar to me.
Wise beyond his years, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's too why I was kind of still very ignorant to it. Because I was so young and I didn't really understand like what was going on in my house all the time. I just knew that there was a lot of stuff that didn't feel right. But I want to say I made the decision when I was about 11, 12, that like I wasn't going to live like this. And the way that I grew up was not how I was going to raise a family or how I was ever going to be seen, which completely changed my perspective on how I would raise a family and the dynamic that I would want in my house.
Yeah. I mean, I think you grow up really fast, right? In that environment. Similar to me, I can relate. I think it was 11 years old when I kind of made that correlation that this isn't BS and I don't want to live like this. And yeah, I can totally relate for sure. When did you really realize that your childhood had a big effect on you? Like when you got into adulthood, did you make that connection? All the different programming and stuff that we received.
So it's actually crazy because I'm still learning about it right now. I learned it
Yeah.
very, very late in life.
Hmm.
Because of my environment, I ended up pregnant fairly young. I got pregnant when I was 18. I had my son when I was 19. And I have been in just fight mode ever since.
Hmm.
I raised my son pretty much on my own. His dad was very absent, in and out, kind of just like when he felt like it. And I picked up all the slack. And my son today is 15, which is awesome. Like we made it through, but like we still go through some of those things. It's still a
Hmm.
learning process. But yeah, so it wasn't until I was 30. So when I turned 30, I feel like I had an extremely pivotal moment. Something changed where I was
Hmm.
just like, this isn't how I want to live. I'm not happy. I don't like the way my family is being led. And what's wrong with, like, what is going on here that I need to fix? Like, oh, this has to start with me because I'm the leader of the house. And then that's when I realized there was a lot of damage done that I suppressed for a long time because I had, I just didn't have resources. I didn't have any encouragement. I didn't have anyone to really help me. So I was never able to work on myself. But I had a really hard reality check around the age of 30 that helped me to correlate that a lot of the things that I had been going through, depression, some difficulties that I had kind of like raising my son, were all things that I was taught during childhood.
Hmm.
And then like super like abandonment issues. I was very codependent with my son, which I shouldn't have been. And there are things that I'm trying to teach him now, things that I'm still learning. So through therapy, I was able to understand programming and all the different ways that I was programmed as a child and of course as a teenager, and then my own programming, and really like, where did I see myself fitting in all of this and who do I want to be now? It's been a beautiful experience. It really has. But it took me a while. I do like to think, well, I would like to think that a lot of women find it a little bit earlier just so they can really enjoy the rest of their lives. But I know
I'd like to think that too.
it,
I only say that because I'm in my 50s. And honestly, I didn't start this journey until I was 39. Like I
wow,
really
okay.
lived
Yeah.
through raising my kids in the same programming I was in and knowing there was stuff wrong and knowing that my behavior was irrational and my moods were, up and down all over the place. But I think I was like you, just really stuck in that kind of fight or flight mode. And so I didn't reach out. I was terrified to reach out really. And that
Oh, well.
that's can be tough for I think I think having kids too. I mean, you had your son really early. And so you kind of grow with them too, right? And you're going through these things, not realizing it. And then all of a sudden, like you said, something kicks you in the ass and
Yeah,
wakes you up
exactly.
to it, right?
Exactly. And I tell my son that now, like we raised each other. I know that's not like the best terms to use, but it's a reality. And there's a lot of times I'm very honest with my son. Everything is very transparent with us. There's been a couple of times where, you and I, we were learning this at the same time. And I know that maybe like that's not what you want to hear, or that's not what people would like to, but it's the absolute truth. So I need you to be patient with me.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I think if kids can understand that about their parents, it makes you human. It is tough not understanding what your parents are going through. So that's a beautiful thing that you're transparent with them.
Yeah, I try.
Yeah. So was there any strategies or mindset shifts that you had around that time that influenced you in getting help?
Um, it was hard. So no, that was the biggest problem, was that like I had like this like pivotal moment where I knew I didn't want to do this anymore. I didn't want to be like in my current relationship. Like I didn't want to have this lifestyle, but I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to change it. But the first thing that I did do was start doing just like research on like meditation, and like found like different ways to like quiet my mind and start like planning. And that's when I ran into Dr. De Silva. So I've read a lot of his books, and he's taught me really how to express myself and to use affirmations, how to meditate, how to really express and talk about the things that I truly want, but the steps that it's going to take to get there.
Mhm.
Um, and then I read the book, The 12-Week Year, and it teaches you how to strategize and how to plan and how to execute without any procrastination. So the main part of the book is zero procrastination. So you can literally accomplish typically what you would accomplish in a year in 12 weeks if you stick to the plan. And I thought that was the best advice that I had ever gotten in my life. And that's what I did. So I immediately started therapy. Dr. Silva actually recommends that in his books too. Like even with all the meditation and spiritual tools that you can gain, therapy is definitely it. So I went to therapy for a year. And then after a year, the therapist I was working with said that I had been through a lot of stuff and that she thought it would be really important for me to take a PTSD class, which teaches you about PTSD, exactly what it is, triggers, and then why you respond to certain things the way that you do. It was a 6-week class. I went twice a week and it changed my whole entire life. I knew what PTSD was, of course. But to have it explained to you in that depth and to truly understand what trauma does to your brain and understanding like neurotransmitters and how they become disattached and how you can put them back together. And I needed to know all of that information so that I could really understand how I could take control over my own life.
Yeah. Yeah. That's huge. I knew what it was too, but I didn't realize I had it. Like I thought, oh, that's for other people, right? Like PTSD.
I thought it was for everyone that went to the army.
Yeah, me too. Like you must have been to war to have that. So how could I have it? I didn't, there was no war. And there were lots of good things in my childhood too. I had one stable parent, which was great, but I didn't realize that all those little traumas that happen or some of the bigger ones created that. I had no idea until much later in life. So I think it's important for people to understand that although you might think that it's only for people who've gone to war or someone who's been in a car accident or some sort of big traumatic event, it's not always the way it is. And as a kid, all these little traumas over time become so complex and they change the way your brain works.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. What was it, just like a class through a community school, or how did you find this class?
Yeah, so it's a class that gets offered through the facility where I get therapy.
So that would be a good resource for people to actually have a class like that to understand, right? This is the first time I've ever heard of someone offering it. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think hopefully if you have a therapist, they should have other resources that can connect you.
Yeah.
Because the information is crucial in order to understand, especially if you've been through the types of traumas that we have. So I can name, I've hit every single trauma that is offered, and then developed like PTSD, have anxiety and depression, and I manage my life fine. Like I do really, really well. But I do that because I have the information that I need. I had the resources that I needed.
Yeah. That's really important for sure. I want to ask you too about if you could share 2 key pieces of advice that probably had the most profound effect on your life and your healing journey. What would that be?
I would say is allow yourself the time to have your self-discovery. A lot of people that have experienced a lot of trauma sometimes tend to have like codependent relationships and tend to be extremely codependent people. And that's because they don't understand how to sit with themselves. And when they do sit with themselves, what do they truly do with themselves? That time alone is extremely important. That is why I had like my pivotal moment, because I needed to find out who I was so that I could be my highest self, so that I could be my best self. And I needed to sit with myself to really understand that. So allow yourself the time that you need to really figure out who you are and what you want. It doesn't happen overnight. And you can take baby steps to do whatever it is that you want to accomplish in your life. But like, who do you really want to be at the end of the day? And what are things that you really like? Like, what are things that you really enjoy? Allowing yourself that time and grace for sure would be my first thing. And then my second would be...
Sorry, Samantha, can you just explain what that codependency looks like? Because I think there's people who may not really understand if they might not recognize that they're in a codependent relationship. What does that look like? I mean, what did it look like for you?
Yeah, definitely. So for me, it looks like somebody that's seems a little too clingy. That's like, they need to be in constant communication, that we need to be constantly surrounded by each other. We need to be together all the time. We can't have lives outside of each other. That's very codependent. It's very normal for someone to be in a healthy relationship and be able to kind of like live and lead their life and simply communicate with their partner, of course, all the time. But it doesn't have to be a 24/7 thing. It doesn't have to be a constant a constant communication or kind of almost like you want to think like possessive. That's not the way a healthy relationship works. And you can do that with kids. You can do it with children, with neighbors, anyone really. You have to have boundaries. And for me, that's what it looked like a lot of extreme amount of overstepping, overbearing, constant communication without really allowing time to sit by myself and to just like thrive on my own. And then that went into my adulthood. So I was in codependent adult relationships, which I didn't want to be in. I'm not a codependent person. I actually really enjoy being by myself, but I would find myself being with other people or like watching my partner play PlayStation for hours at a time because that made them comfortable. That's because you're codependent. I'm not. So I'm going to separate myself here. I'm going to leave. I'm going to go to bed. So even having to like sit in the same room, like I don't need that to thrive, or it's not necessary for me. So those are just like some very small red flags, but there's a lot. It can get pretty deep.
Yeah. I think with kids too, as we don't realize we're doing it in the moment as a mom, right? And you don't realize that it kind of looks like controlling behaviors. It's like you're so wrapped up in every little thing that your child's doing. Sometimes people want to be besties with their kid, and that's very codependent, and the lines get blurred, the boundaries get blurred, and kids have a hard time coming up with their own boundaries because they don't understand that, right? So, yeah. And sorry, so your second thing?
Oh, accountability. Yeah. So accountability. It's huge for me. I have to keep myself accountable for everything. And I think everyone should, to be honest. Like we are responsible for our own well-being. We are responsible for what we leave and create on this earth. And the only way to make sure that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing is to check in with yourself and to keep yourself accountable.
What would be one thing that you do to do that? Because that can be hard for people. I mean, I'm guilty of that too. It's like I set a goal and then I feel like I fall off the wagon, and I have a hard time being accountable to myself because I didn't learn that at an early age, and that's a type of programming. So what's something that you do to keep yourself accountable?
Yeah. So actually part of my coaching tips too is what I do is I have check-in sheets. So I would sit and I would think about 3 to 5 different topics or areas that I think are super important to me. And then I would give myself again 3 to 5 things I want to check off at the end of every day. And they don't have to be huge, like, achievable goals. It doesn't have to be like a 5-year plan. These are just things that you can check off every day. Like, I took care of myself today. Did I drink enough water? Did I eat a healthy meal? Did I make time for me? Those are simple enough. Because there's going to be days where you can't check all those boxes. Yeah. And then it's just repetition from there. So every single night you have these boxes that you need to check, whether they be mental or if they're actually on paper. I have 5 things that I need to check off at the end of every day. And of course, it can depend too, because not every person is very data oriented. But if it's something that you really want and a goal that you really want to get to, then this checklist is going to be important. And for me, that's what it is. So I go to bed every night and I have my checklist that I check off this. And if I didn't, why? And if I can have a reasoning behind it, like it's okay. Of course, I'll allow myself grace. But at the same time, like I also need to keep myself accountable. And I didn't get to this because I was scrolling too long or I didn't have enough time because I was doing something else. So just so that I'm keeping myself accountable and I understand why I didn't make it to a certain place.
Yeah, I think that's a great reason to have a coach too, because as a coach, you can keep someone accountable, especially if someone struggles with their own personal accountability, right? Right. And yeah, that's a great tool for sure. And I always think putting pen to paper helps me solidify that a little better instead of just thinking it in my mind, because that can go astray at any moment. So yeah,
I know what you mean.
Yeah. Good advice. So in your experience, what are some of the challenges that your clients come to you with?
Moms. It's always moms. And I love this one, right? Because it's so difficult. As soon as you sit down with a mom, the first thing she starts spewing off is all the things that her kids have going on and all the places that she's supposed to be all at the same time. And it's so funny because the conversation goes the same way every time. But I would say that's definitely like my largest category. We do not make enough time for ourselves as women. We do not do proper self-care. And ultimately, you cannot take care of anyone else if you don't take care of yourself first. So I think that is so important across the board. Everybody needs to hear that. Did you drink enough water today? Did you eat a healthy meal? Have you been sleeping okay? Those 3 things are the 3 things that basic human beings need just to survive. And you should be able to check in with yourself at any point in the day and say, do I have these 3 things? Did I do this for myself? And I don't care what the kids have going on. I don't care if everyone in the house is crying. Did you have enough water? Did you eat a healthy meal? Yeah. And can you squeeze a nap in somewhere?
Exactly.
Right? Because in order for the house to thrive, mom has to thrive too. And we get so caught up in everyone else's lives and what everyone else is doing that we lose our sense of self. So I think that's why it's so important too for women to go on self-discovery journeys kind of later in life, right? So now your kids are grown up and you kind of find yourself like, hey, like, what do I do now? Now it's time for a new self-discovery. Like, where are you at? Where would you like to see yourself? But it all comes down to time management, ultimately. So what I teach all my clients is a very quick kind of like meal prep hack. So you freeze all your meats on Sundays, season everything gets Ziploc, sealed bagged, and gets tossed in the freezer. So all you're doing is you're pulling it out the night before. That way you have it prepared for the next day. Simple tips like that. So making sure that we're meal prepping all the time. You can go as far as coordinating all of the kids, making sure that all of the laundry done is on Sunday night. So Monday through Friday, you guys are set. What you're trying to do is create small little tasks that are going to literally eliminate chaos throughout the week, because something is going to happen. Nothing is ever going to go as planned, right? But the idea is that you have all of the main things semi-figured out or a somewhat backup plan. And then making sure that moms feel enough confidence that they can stop and just do some self-reflection. Did you take care of yourself today? Because that's one of the biggest things that I see is that we don't feel confident to do that because we're filled with so much guilt all the time. Oh, but if I take time for myself, then I feel guilty because now I can't take so-and-so here and here. But that's okay. Because it's also very healthy for the people that we love to hear no.
No kidding. Yeah, I mean, that hits home for a lot of people. And you don't have to have gone through trauma or childhood stuff to be a mom in this situation at all. I think it's becomes very complicated when you do have trauma that you're still holding on to. And you do have a lot of programming going on that makes dealing with your kids and all the stuff that goes along with that even that much more difficult. But you're right. We, as moms, we do not prioritize ourselves at all. And it's so, so important to do that. I didn't do this until I was a little later in life, too. I was always trying to do everything and make sure everybody got here, there. And I was the last person on the list. Like, at the end of the day, I'm too exhausted to even do those things. I don't remember if I had enough water that day. I don't remember if I ate some food off their plate or actually sat down for a meal. Like, it's crazy. It happens all the time. I think one of the most important things that you shared too was it's so important for the people that you're taking care of to see that you have put yourself first. You can say no to them, because if you don't put all these things in place, how are they ever going to learn? It's like you're recreating that hamster wheel for them, right? They see you doing it, they're going to jump on it just as fast, right?
That's why leadership is so important.
Yeah.
And I think that's why my transformation for me was so important, because I understood that I was separated at the time too, that this happened. So there's no one to blame. I'm looking me directly in the mirror. And not only that, I don't want anyone else to be a part of this, because now that I see it the way that I see it, and I understand that this is truly a me versus me journey, and that I am the leader, regardless of what situation that we're in. I play a lead role here. So I'm the one that needs to change this. If I don't change this, then everyone that's following me is going to fail.
Yeah.
So I think once I realized that and I started having those really hard talks, I was like, okay, I understand what it is that I need to do.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so important. Talk to me about the correlation between mental health and exercise and nutrition. I mean, it's huge, but I don't think there's enough people who understand that, especially moms.
Right. So my favorite topic, because what a lot of people don't understand is children under the age of 18 need 60 minutes of vigorous exercise in order to sustain a healthy life. So that's why kids have recess at school and they have playtime. And I think once you kind of like age out of that, again, mom's abuse history, kind of like it all ties in together. We automatically assume that's not for us. We're not kids. That's not how that works. Yeah. So we are just as important as the kids are, right? And I always take it back to them because we forget like how important it is to take care of each other unless it involves the kids. It's important for us as moms to take care of each other. It's important for us all to be taking care of each other. And as we age, bones and muscle deteriorate. There's nothing that you can do about that other than strength training. And then when you hit menopause, it's a whole different kind of beast, because now we're talking elevated cortisol levels and osteoporosis and all of these things that can 100% be prevented if we take the time. And then if you don't feel good, your mental health is going to decline. There's no question about that. So you need those certain dopamine releases in order to feel happy, so that you're not going back to past patterns and finding that dopamine somewhere else where it's kind of like triggering, or it's like you're going back to a habit that you worked so hard to break. You don't want to do that, whether it be food or cigarettes or just an unhealthy lifestyle. If you don't practice new habits, you're always going to go back to those old ones. So why not exercise and nutrition? You're talking about things that are going to give you longevity, things that are going to help you age healthily. So eating fruits and vegetables, wonderful patterns that you're creating in habits that other people are going to see, that are going to follow. The decrease in blood pressure, you want to decrease heart rate. These are all things that are super, super important, especially as we age. Over time, we can't help but kind of just like let time do its thing. And in women, estrogen goes down, cortisol goes up. We tend to get a little bit heavier, sluggish, tired. The only thing to combat that is exercise and nutrition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then, of course, it all ties together. So that's going to help your mental health too, because we find ourselves like sitting on the screens all day, people that are working remotely. So you're working 9 to 5 remotely, you're sitting at the screen all day, and then you're on a podcast afterwards, or you're not allowing your body to relieve the energy that it's been stored up in it all day. So we have to do that at least once a day, even if it's just simple stretching. It's very important to stretch, because you need to release certain energies that you carry with you so that you're not feeling overwhelmed and bogged down.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll, of course, receive some mental clarity with that too.
Yeah.
So you're running all day long, and you're feeling stressed out, you're feeling tired, you're feeling super, super anxious. Stop and stretch. It's the best thing to do, is to move your body, because your mind-body correlation is real. That mind-body-soul connection, that's a real thing. That's 100% real. Your mind is directly connected to your body is directly connected to your mind. So I know on days where I'm super chaotic, running around, feeling stressed because I have so many things on my plate, my mind feels scrambled also.
Yeah.
So one of them has to give. At some point, I have to stop, and I have to breathe, and I have to stretch.
Okay.
And that's kind of like my go-to, but that's part of one of my check-ins. All of this is part of self-discovery, and it's part of self-love. Like, I love myself enough to check in with myself and say, I feel anxious, my heart is beating fast, I don't like it. I need to change something right now.
Okay.
Whether it be like, you know what, you're going to be late, and that's okay. Everyone just relax. You might not be able to make it tonight, or we're not doing anything. I'm going to take a bath.
Exactly.
And that's just what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think sometimes as a mom, you feel like the world's going to end if you don't get your kid to this thing, or everyone's so reliant on being at a certain time and being here, being there. And you know what? There comes a time before you crack and have a breakdown, is just, you know what? Nothing's going to go away. The world isn't going to stop if we just take a break tonight. You know, your
Right.
team will be okay. Your school thing will be okay. Everyone will be okay. And it's hard to say those words when you feel a lot of guilt and you feel like you're just supposed to do all this stuff, you know? It's like shooting all
And that
over
was
yourself.
a key word.
Yeah.
That was a key word, though, like supposed to. But who said you were supposed to do all those things?
Exactly.
Like, who said you had to do all of these things today? You don't. Yeah.
Exactly. It's like a story we tell ourselves in our mind, right? And the scrolling and the social media is just that much worse for it, because you're comparing yourself to people all the time. You're seeing their absolute 100% day on a post, and you don't know what the rest of their life looks like. And here you are trying to keep up with that. It's ridiculous. Like, it's crazy.
Agreed.
I know this is a big one, because it's really tough when you've got a lot going on, and especially if you come from the type of environment that we come from. How did you cultivate some self-love on your journey? What were some of the steps that you took to do that?
So I went through kind of like a pity party, or like a victim mindset first, where I felt really bad. When I started to do the PTSD class, and it kind of like took me through my past, and I realized like everything that I really had been through that I never allowed myself grace for, and that I never really even talked to myself about. I was really sad. Like for me, I was sad for like younger me. Cause I went through my whole entire life living that way. I went through my whole entire life letting all of that sit on me, and I never talked to anyone about it. And I realized that that's why I was so angry, in that in order for me to continue to allow people to do whatever they want to me and to treat me like that, that's self-hatred. Like I have to stand up for myself. And that's when I realized, like, I'm not going to just accept whatever you have to say and just deal with it. I'm not going to do that, because I love myself to say no. And what I have to say matters. And it was kind of a beautiful feeling, but it comes with confidence too. And I think that maturing and age has a lot to do with that also. I think sometimes it happens a little bit faster for people like you and I that have been through a lot of things. It tends to happen a little quicker. Like we've seen a lot of stuff really young, so we process it faster. Yeah. But I think it happens slowly but surely. But one day I realized that nobody ever had little Sam's back, and that I wasn't gonna continue down that road. I wasn't gonna allow that to just be the rest of my life.
I think the key point in that too is allowing yourself to feel for your younger self, right? And really giving yourself the grace and compassion and a little space to grieve that, because you did go through a lot, you know? And I think that was one of the pieces I was missing when I first started in this kind of self-love journey. I wasn't ready to look at that little person. And once I had a therapist help me with, you know, my younger self stuff, and that's what I was missing. I was missing that part that I was actually just allowing myself to grieve that and to feel those feelings and to process it, because then I could do better for her, right? Then I could be a voice for her, right? So I think that's really important, yeah, that you said that. So you actually wrote a cookbook. Do you want to talk about?
Yeah, I did. I wrote a cookbook, which I'm super excited about. You can find it if you go into Amazon. You can just type my name, Samantha Mazola, and it will pop up.
Okay. I'll have it in the show notes too. So
thank you. So that was kind of like I feel like nutrition was huge for me, right? Because I grew up with terrible eating habits too. I grew up very, very poor. So we ate very poor. A lot of carbohydrates, a lot of things that were just bad for you, a lot of dairy, ton of dairy, a lot of red meats. And I didn't know, I had no education. I didn't eat fruit until I was an adult. Like I had bananas and apples, but I had never seen a papaya until I was in my 30s. Like other than being in the grocery store and not knowing what it was. So I retrained my brain to learn different things. I retrained my brain to understand how you could eat food that wasn't processed, be healthy, but make it taste good. And I just felt like everybody needed to know that. So there are ways that you can make healthy meals good, and like they're not terrible. And all the information that I keep gathering, I just want to keep putting out there so other people can hear it and see it too. And that's kind of where I was like, I think I'm going to make a cookbook, and I'm going to make it kind of like fun, and I'm going to put stuff in it that's like I feel like I have like a cheat meal in there, which is like amazing, but it's still kind of healthy. Like there's a lot of protein in it. It's not, the carbs aren't too high. But it's also teaching you about nutrition, teaching you about macros. So, protein, carbohydrates, and fats, which is really
good. And how to balance that. Yeah. I've been a meal prepper for years. So that's one thing that I kind of started when I started on this journey. I also taught fitness as well. So, but the meal prepping literally saved me. Like it saved me so many times, is on Sundays or Saturdays or whatever day I picked. I would just go grocery shopping, and then the next day it was like meal prep day. I would cook enough meals. I still do it to this day. And we freeze the meals, and it's just me and my partner now. But it's awesome because I don't have to think about it during the week. I'm not taking care of little kids anymore, but man, this would have come in really handy. You're always trying to figure it out and on the go. But I love to meal prep, and I love different recipes, especially trying to make healthy food taste really good. Like that I actually want that and crave it, right? Because food can be a huge thing for people with trauma. Binge eating, there's like a whole line of it, right? It kind of comes along with living with addiction. So that's great. And you're writing another book?
Yes. So I'm super excited about the plan. So it's Transformation the Plan. And it is, it's a fitness manual. It tells you everything that you need to need about fitness and about kind of health. It literally breaks down like, what is protein? If somebody was to ask, like, what is protein? What is creatine? What is a macro? How do you do that? And then it goes into all types of exercises. So there is So it's 115 pages so far. It's in editing right now. I'm waiting to get it back. And there's so many different exercises. And I tried to make sure that it was very kind of like unified so that everybody could use it. So if you're in a wheelchair, if you had a shoulder replacement, if you had a knee replacement, if you're super, super advanced and you just want to lift, if you're into like cardio training, if you've ever had any cardio respiratory issues, I made sure that it was like a wide spread so that everyone could be involved. And then I paired every exercise with a recipe.
Nice.
So that it teaches you. Yeah. So my goal is to kind of like teach people, okay, so this is the workout that you want to do. If you're looking to build muscle, you're going to pair it with this recipe. And that's how this is going to look. This is how you're going to be able to sustain that. So I tried to make it almost like bulletproof. And then
that's awesome.
On it will say like you have X amount of grams of protein in this meal. And that way it kind of like, because it's a lot of information to absorb. That's one thing that I was trying to make it as user-friendly as possible, because I know when I absorb a lot of information like that, for me, it's always kind of like trial and error. I have to be hands-on with it before I understand if I actually comprehended it correctly. So I tried to really break it down so you could kind of digest it in small pieces and like try it and like do this exercise, pair it with this meal and see if you like it. And then if not, you can always come back to the book and refer to something else.
Yeah, I think that's always challenging. I'm very versed in nutrition and exercise, but honestly, it still gets me about what the heck I'm supposed to be eating before I do my workout or after to like replenish it, right? Without going overboard or without feeling like I'm going to throw up when I'm exercising. So that's really cool. I love that part. Yeah. So anything else you got going on right now? Do you do virtual coaching and stuff?
I do virtual coaching. I have virtual clients. It goes very well. And then I also do in person as well.
Okay. And anything else you got going on right now that you want to plug out there besides your books? And I will link the current book you have in the show notes. And then when the new book comes out, just let me know and I'll plug it into the site.
Thank you so much. The only other thing is I also have my own podcast, so it's Talk About It with Sam.
Right.
But the with is just a W. I'm on Spotify, Apple Music, Google, and then I also have a visual, which is on YouTube.
Awesome. And I'll post those too. That's great. And how do you like the podcast?
I love it. I love it so much. So my podcast is, it's very versatile. So we talk about all types of things. My, the last segment that I just did was I had convicted felons come on and do interviews. They had been charged with murder, homicide as young kids, but prior to actually being developed, most of them, and it took place between like 16 and 17, and they would receive life in prison. So they got a second chance. Yeah. So here in the state of Massachusetts, we passed a law in 2014 that said that anybody that was convicted of a life sentence prior to the age of 17 would be given an opportunity to go back to school and then potentially have parole.
Wow.
And they all did. They all did exactly what they were supposed to do. A lot of them got bachelor's degrees, and they're all working like youth and human services right now, which is a beautiful thing. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I love it when people overcome their stuff and give back. I have so many people who I've seen that do in the addiction community. My son was in a long addiction, and now just watching him and other people give back, it's truly a blessing. And honestly, I don't ever want to see a parent go through that, but it does give you gifts going through hard stuff. Thanks so much, Samantha, for being on with me. I really appreciate it. And I will link everything, and people can reach out to you and follow you on Instagram and check out your podcast as well. And and I hope to do this with you again soon.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much. This was great. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you for joining me today on another episode of Becoming Sound. If this episode resonated with you in some way, please share it with someone you care about. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button. It helps to get this information out to more people who may need it. If you have a sec, I would love a follow on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. While you're there, hit the 5-star rating and give me a review. When you're scrolling, follow me on my social platforms, and I would love to hear your comments and feedback. Have a fabulous day, lots of love and gratitude from me. Please note, The views, information, and opinions expressed during the Becoming Sound podcast series are solely those of the individuals involved. The content of this podcast is to educate, inform, and for entertainment purposes only. This podcast series and the content presented does not constitute for medical or other professional advice or services. If you are in crisis or in need of help, please contact your medical or professional provider.